Welcome, everybody. It is episode 4 of Tuxedo Cat Productions. Man, you know what? I haven't named this yet, but it's today is going to be a conversation about stream of consciousness, where I wanted to kind of, in the keeping of the routine of creating a podcast, I wanted to talk about things in my childhood that influenced me in such a way where I start with one thing and then through my stream of consciousness and focusing on the what pretty much what crawls into my brain, follow that conversation for today's podcast. So I appreciate y'all checking in. I finally figured out how to use the mics. It took me 4 times. I know last week it was a little rough on the mics. I might be putting myself too much into it now. But hey, we're trying new things. Sooner or later, I'm going to get this down. But I mean, this is podcast number 4. That means I've been doing this for a week or a month now. That means it's pretty good to become a routine after 30 days. Who knows? It's whatever everyone wants. So here I'm going to move this a little bit. So, little backstory before I begin. I am a female. I am 34 years old. I was born in 1985. I have 3 older brothers. My family is Catholic. We grew up in rural, I like to call cow country, Buffalo, New York. So, the roaring hills where the cows live. That's where I grew up. So a lot of these influences had to do with what was available to me. So being from a very small town, we had one stoplight. It was Delavan, New York is the small town, and we had one stoplight. And I remember we lived in a 4-story, I think it was a Victorian house. It was a large house. There was a basement, first floor, second floor, and then the attic, half of it was turned into a bedroom for my brothers. So so those are some influences directly affecting my life. But as a child, I remember being really turned off by Barbie dolls. I didn't like the fact that there was a male or female. I still can't really I really can't tell you why, even though, I could go one way or the other what I think it could have been, but I really just didn't like the Barbie dolls. I really enjoyed the stuffed animals. Stuffed animals were colorful. They didn't have, it was what it was. It was a dinosaur, or it it was just some sort of plush animal. And so I kind of, as a kid, gravitated towards those genderless things. I remember I disliked very much wearing dresses. And I can tell you, just because I was afraid people would look up my skirt was the initial fear. But that was a little kid growing up to today. And now it's just a comfort thing. I don't like wind going up my dress. But we're keeping around influencers, things that influenced us, or that influenced me as a child. Excuse me, as a child. I remember gravitating to comedy via the television. So born in 85, I remember in middle school studying for spelling tests on a Thursday night. I would always watch Seinfeld with my parents. And so I really, really enjoyed Seinfeld. Not too much Friends. I didn't get into that. I got into Seinfeld with Jerry Seinfeld and the crew, and I really enjoyed the kind of quirky circle storytelling where, to a middle schooler, it was just the delivery and how the story was told is really what I understood at the time. And I understood that there was a punchline and there was a build up, and that we had several characters that we were learning from throughout the show that eventually tied everything together, show after show after show. It was one big storytelling circular movement, which I mean, I really thought it was funny. Um, Maybe I didn't understand the jokes, but I could catch on to the rhythm of how that comedy kind of came came out, influenced me to really start talking about everything that's happening in sort of having a cadence, kind of like Jerry Seinfeld has a really good delivery, and so I that influenced me a lot. George Carlin was definitely a huge influencer for me. I know probably not the cleanest of material for a young child to listen to, but left to my own devices, I caught a couple of his HBO specials, and I really enjoyed how he delivered his comedy, and he did it in such a way, like he was very spot on his delivery. I mean, whether it was rehearsed or not, I don't care. I never thought of that. He told me a story, and I was engaged the whole hour, probably 2 hours, however long the HBO special was. George Carlin had a way with words and had a way of telling a story that was different, and I really resonated with that. I really enjoyed his rawness. It was this is how it is, and f you if you don't like it. I really love that kind of revolutionary, revolting, like, this is what I feel, and I'm gonna say it. And I mean, looking back then, I had no idea what it meant to be famous, or I mean, just having a whole bunch of people look at you, having an audience look at you. I've never been on stage, but I he pierced through all of that sort of. He showed me before I was scared of the people, of the audience. He inspired me to create my sort of the way I communicate, which is very tongue in cheek, which is very out in front. Um, True feelings, raw emotions, and obviously, with that sort of mentality, I rubbed a few folks the wrong way, probably many, which in turn I had to learn to deal with the consequences of being that raw, open person, which, that led to the understanding and the empathy that you could hurt other people's feelings with not just your choice of words, but your tone and your delivery. I mean, the street of comedy and communication goes both ways. Like, you can speak one way and get laughs, and then you can speak a completely different way using the same words and hurt everyone's feelings. And so George Carlin was huge for me in that arena. And plus, in my, like, if my college years, when I would drive to and from college, I went to East Carolina University, and so I would drive from Charlotte to ECU, and that's a 4-hour drive. And um, this was in the day of burning CDs, and so I like to listen to books, and I like to listen to people talk when I'm driving. So George Carlin became very occupied in my car. I had many of his HBO specials on burned discs that I would put in and listen to, and I couldn't tell you what the name of each HBO special is, but as soon as I hear his opening, I'll be able to recite the whole thing. That's kind of how my exposure with George Carlin was. But at this college point in my life, when I was starting to question, I grew up Catholic, and so I was questioning whether or not, hey, this church stuff is kind of bogus, and I don't think I'm being just lazy. And I started questioning these core beliefs that I grew up, that were bestowed upon me through Catholic school and going to church very frequently. And so George Carlin, having that same sort of upbringing, but a few decades before me, a few generations even, when things were a little bit more conservative. I mean, he came at his Catholic upbringing very uh, revolutionary. He very openly and very challenging of it, that I can't even imagine what kind of backlash he felt behind the cameras, but on stage he really had a message that resonated with me, about, hey, think for yourself and challenge, and just, man, there's too many examples to go through. His marketing lullaby. I, I mean, I'm in marketing today, and it probably has a lot to do with George Carlin. The words you can say on television. I mean, the amount of thought behind language being used, and such a revolutionary time of television being broadcasted, even globally, and having one mind telling a story. His use of words and his eloquence and his cadence, I mean, he was a master of communication, and he did it with winning people over with jokes, and people could relate, and I'm sure there's a lot of people who hated him for that very same reason. And I mean, sitting here talking, thinking about what I'm doing, talking on a podcast and teaching people paint classes, and man, I'm even thinking about doing open mic night, but it all comes from George Carlin. His his delivery, his precise, his passion, I mean, he was diamond quality communication, and a huge influencer on my life. George Carlin, I would probably say, is number one. Man, I'm sorry if you gotta hear me swallowing all the time. That's probably Mike's too close, but we're learning. So, talking about George Carlin, he goes up on stage, he does his thing. I'm sure it took him a long time to get there. I know a little bit of his history. He had a lot of exposure working for radio stations, and he built up to that ability to get on stage and open with, you know what, fuck you. I mean, he comes out on stage and and uses very challenging language. I find that extremely inspirational. And to move into a kind of a different realm, drag queens. I have been following drag queens, ever since I could remember. Now, I think my first exposure to drag queens was Patrick, God, not Patrick Stewart, Patrick Swayze, um, oh, Wesley Snipes, and John Leguizamo, three very strong male actors in the 90s, created a movie called To Wong Fu, Thanks for Everything, Julie Newmar. And that is a very fantastic story of judging a book by its cover. What the type of information that gets to small towns is not a lot. But it's these three flamboyant, the characters they're three gay men, and they are women. They dress as women as their day to day, and their performers as women, and we call men who dress as women and perform as women drag queens. So I was really inspired by the amount of confidence that it took for a man to put on a dress and makeup and go out in public, because, hey, that's not what men do. And if you do that, there are consequences of ridicule and possibly even harm. I mean, there's a lot at risk here, but man, they did it. They stared the risk right in the face, and these drag queens did the thing, and they went out there and they were themselves, and I loved that. I went to many drag queen performances for my birthday. Anytime they came to college campus, I went. I became a burlesque performer several years after I graduated college, And I look up to these drag queens for that confidence that how you can own the stage and not give a shit about what anyone thinks, because they are looking at you in awe, because have their you have the power over them of confidence. You have that as a drag queen that kills it. You have this ridiculous amount of confidence that you can go anywhere, into any room, in any situation, and you're not thinking about who's going to be looking at you. You're not thinking about the first notes of your number. You're not thinking about anything except, I am fantastic, and I am here, and I want to sing, and I'm going to do my thing, and I'm going to kill it. And you have this sass about you. It's maybe a little controversial sass. It's maybe a little bit too much. It could easily turn off sensitive people. It's the thrill of not giving a shit about what other people think of you, because this is it. This is who I am. I'm out here. I am unafraid. And I loved that. I love that mentality. And even today, 34 years old, I love drag queens. One of my friends, I'm about to dress up. I made a dress for Condom Couture, which is a fashion show where artists create garments out of unused, unlubricated condoms that are saved specifically for this event. And they gave me 2,000 condoms, and I made this design, and man, I wanted a drag queen to wear it, because God, I love the sass. So performers, we got drag queen, no particular drag queen, just because I'm in love with the idea. Every drag queen is their own artist in their own way, their own performer. I don't have any particular one that I enjoy more than others. Growing up or even now, I just love the over the top, bold, confident expression. And I'm not sure if it had anything to do with the time of when I grew up, 90s, 00s, 10s. But I don't see it the same way with women. I've asked myself that with the role reversal. I don't understand. So it must be something there to look into later, that it only had to do with men. Men dressing like women. So not so much women dressing like men, because I was a tomboy and I did that all the time, and it wasn't as fun as men dressing like women. But certainly gave me the confidence to be myself. Man, television for me growing up was huge. I watched Nickelodeon a lot. Nickelodeon cartoons, Nickelodeon game shows. I didn't watch very many old things. Nick at Night, like I hated Nick at Night. It was not my style, man. I wanted cartoons. I wanted just the sitcom of a cartoon, like Rugrats, Rocko's Modern Life. Gosh, there's so many, but I mean they all had the same format. It was just different directors and illustrators to produce something completely different. But I loved Nickelodeon, and it kept me company a lot of times during the summer, and especially on the weekends. They had All That, which was the children's version of SNL, Saturday Night Live, which I also loved. Saturday Night Live was, if I could stay up for it, was a treat. It was an absolute treat, because it was adult humor, and so I was being a little risque by listening to it. But it's the delivery, and the balls to get on stage. It was live. Oh man, they could make a mistake. How crazy, they're going up there live. That's insane. How are they remembering all these lines? How are they making everybody laugh? How are they doing that? How are they not freaking out? So it was SNL was huge for me, and so I watched SNL in the Adam Sandler, Chris Farley. Um, well, I mean, those are the two big ones that I remember. But the John Lovitz, they're just names are just flying in. But from about 95, 96, 97, 98, I was really big into watching SNL. And so the sketch comedy behind that was, again, very similar to Jerry Seinfeld. And that situational comedy and made me kind of think about George Carlin's stand-up comedy. And so there's these three different ways of performing comedy. So I was exposed to storytelling in its finest, and I loved it. I love the storytelling behind all of these different genres of comedy. It requires so much thought and effort, and like you have to be a smart person. And when I mean smart, you have to be knowledgeable on your subject, and you have to be very fluid with how you speak in your choice of words. And you got to have the balls, and it all comes down to that. You got to have the confidence to go out there and say whatever you need to say. And then, I mean, let's talk about music. 1995 or 4, somewhere around that era, Alanis Morissette came to the scene, and my brother bought Jagged Little Pill and would play it while we played Nintendo 64 Mario Kart for hours. And when a CD came out, there were 12 songs, and so roughly about 45 minutes of one person's album that you would listen to in order. And we listened while we played Mario Kart 64, Mario Kart 64, let me just say right now, I'm amazing. I'm always Yoshi because he's lightweight and because I like his sounds. And it's the whole genderless thing again, because he's genderless. I mean, who knows what Yoshi is? But my brother bought Alanis Morissette, Jagged Little Pill, and oh man, I loved it. I loved it because she said the F word. She said the F word on You Ought to Know, which I believe was track number 2. But yeah, Alanis Morissette, I didn't, it didn't really speak to me on a grunge level so much as a female performer singing feelings, as she famously sung about being cheated on. I resonated with her way of storytelling through emotions, and it would be, probably 20 years later until I could capitalize on that kind of artistic expression. But thinking about Alanis Morissette, she was pretty out there, and I loved it. And I started writing a lot of poetry around that time. A lot about boys that I liked, and I was so petrified of telling anybody I liked them. I was not very popular. It had to be the confidence thing, but I did not do well when it came to having a crush. So I put all my thoughts into poems, which I didn't do it in any kind of rule form like prose or whatnot. I didn't study that. I wrote it according to a rhythm in my head. I would sing the song to myself, I would write it out, and it would be an expression of how I felt about this boy, or dark times that happened in my middle school years. I would write about that. I really used writing and singing out loud, kind of like I wouldn't rap it, but I would write a song without writing the music. and I had a whole notebook full of poems. But still to this day, it's not something that I want to pursue. But it is definitely the beginning of my creative training. This constantly put expressing myself on paper, very, very big influencer there behind Alanis Morissette. And um, I do have to throw in, times with my family. The three brothers, my parents, and I were very big at playing games and poker games at that, where we would gamble. I would never gamble large sums of money, but I would work with nickels and quarters. And when I say large sums of money, I mean dollars. Like my brothers would put dollars and dollars, and we would play 21, blackjack, Texas Hold'em. Those are the ones I would participate in. But the key thing that influenced me is whenever we had family night and we would play cards, someone got to choose the music that we would listen to. And I mean, before I knew any music, it was either my dad or my brothers. And so my brothers would introduce me to an array of music. Dave Matthews Band, which uh, is very big on my emotional side. I really loved how that sounded and how they were telling the story, and it was jam bandy, and man, it just feel good music. So Dave Matthews Band would play. Metallica, I liked Metallica because it was everybody commented on it, everybody loved it. It was the sound that it was back then it was, is this good music for kids? Is this a good influencer? But it was, to me, it just, man, this sounds amazing. It sounds, I don't know what to do with it, but it gives me feelings. It makes me want to move and work out. I know that's when my dad and brothers would work out. They'd play metal music like that. Um, Cranberries. I like the Cranberries because they were from Ireland, and our heritage comes from Ireland. But I also liked her voice. She was very emotional as well, and I really enjoyed that. And I remember listening to a few of her songs on repeat and just kind of visualizing a music video to it. As a kid, I would headphones on, eyes closed, visualize this whole thing. And come to think of it, I did that my whole life. Especially when I started to drive, autopilot would kick on. And I mean, I'm not an unsafe driver, so I'm just going to go ahead and disclaim that. But what would happen is I would be audibly stimulated while I'd be driving, and it's almost like I would split my awareness, and I would put a song on and I would choreograph a dance move, or it was always some play or some music video. In my head, I'm always a video, I'm always a director and making a video, or I'm always putting on a show. It's always some sort of entertainment. How can I really put my feelings into an expression of entertainment? And since we're moving in our stream of consciousness, I didn't want to entertain folks because I wanted a whole bunch of people to like me. I wanted to entertain folks because I wanted a whole bunch of folks to understand me. And I feel like people, when I watched people watch shows, you had your undivided attention. And when you watch someone in a show, you're supposed to pay attention, you're supposed to listen. This is their time to talk. And further down, or as I got older, I realized, man, people are supposed to think while they're listening to you. And so performing in my brain, whenever I listen to music, especially whenever I listen to music, I could visualize the performance that I wanted to give to that music. So the way I could express myself was through performance. And which is funny because there's this, I don't know if existential is the right word, but there's this dread that I feel thinking about people um, watching me perform something. But if I can tune out those people, if I can just completely forget they're there, I can walk onto a stage and I can perform the way that I visualized it. And there's something to that was therapeutic for me. It was a release, just this buildup of energy. I mean, when I was little, I would have so much. I mean, I still do so much energy. I'd need to run around, rollerblade, do something. But I was huge at performance and theater and being in front of people. I absolutely loved it, and I absolutely hated it at the same time. It's like I needed to have a mental switch to move over to this sort of expression of performance, art therapy, performance therapy. And let me tell you, as a little kid who has a very active mind, I created a lot of anxiety for myself, a lot of baggage that I'm just now going through, and addressing, because I would come up with the craziest things in my head when I was little. Uh, First, the healthy kind was to music, and then the unhealthy kind was, man, the world's gonna end. Everybody hates me. I'm going to hell. Like, oh, I'm gonna die. I don't, my friends hate me. Who am I gonna sit with at lunch? Nobody likes me. I mean, it was just this constant struggle of getting on stage and then getting away from everybody. But that's why these influencers. That's I look to them for that sort of, man, just get on that stage. And that's where Buy the Ticket um, eventually comes from, is that anxiety to take that first step onto the stage is not something I have just for the stage, but it's something I have for speeches, for phone calls, for meetings, anytime where I have to present or play a role in a conversation. There's always that hesitation to begin. And so another one of my influencers, this came a little bit after my childhood, or more into my adulthood, was Hunter S. Thompson. And what resonated with me is I loved how crazy he was, and he said how he felt, and f anyone who doesn't like it. And he battled the consequences of that attitude, and with such, I mean, what I know of it and how I see it is with such elegance. He didn't care. He simply didn't care. He didn't register what anyone else thought, and I liked that. And he had. Now I'm gonna admit that I have not read all of his books. I've read about him, and I've read what many people have interpreted about his Fear and Loathing movie, and I have seen other people's interpretations at Burning Man festivals, and so I am being influenced not directly by the man, but through his work and through other people's interpretations of his work and the sharing of information through the internet. And so he had a philosophy that helped me. It was called Buy the Ticket, Take the Ride. And I saw someone had illustrated this as a little girl, super scared, looking up at this roller coaster, super intimidating, daunting, the upward angle of drawn of the little girl looking so tiny and so frail next to this monstrous roller coaster. She wants to ride it, and you can see she wants to ride it. She goes up, but she's too scared. I can't do this. Look how scary that is. And she walks away, and this is the moment I feel a lot of times, is this moment when you tell yourself, I can't do this. Like, yeah, but I'm here. Yeah, but I came all this way and I'm not going to stop right now. Or I'm going to regret it. I'm going to regret not doing it. And clearly, I don't want to live in regret. I want to know what that roller coaster is like. I want to know if I don't like it. I want to know if I love it. I want to know if I need to bring everybody here because it's going to change my life and I want to change their lives. So I'm going to move my car, but I'm going to take a chance. And so buy the ticket, take the ride, the comic book. So she grits her teeth, she turns around, she gives the money to the guy who gives you the tickets, and she buys her tickets to the roller coaster, and she, with determination and purpose in her stride, the way it's drawn, she is riding that ride. She's clutching the ticket, she hands it in, they strap her into the roller coaster, and you know what she's gonna do then? She's riding that roller coaster. She is strapped in. There's nothing for her to do except give in to the inevitable, which is forward, up and down until it's over. And so when I personified that and related it to my life and my fears were, man, I want to travel. I want to go everywhere I can go, and I want to get there however I can get there. I don't want to ask for money. I want to get it myself. But man, I don't know where I'm going, and I got to go by myself. I got to go by myself because I'm not on anyone else's schedule but mine. And so the mentality was, when I went to buy a ticket, an airline ticket, I've always had issues with money, because I never wanted to ask for it, so I was very close with how much money I had. So parting with $600 for a travel airline ticket was pretty hard for me, but it was now or never. I mean, I have a week vacation. This is when I was teaching English in Korea. I had already gone to Korea, so I'm already here. I'm not getting all the way to Korea and not going to Thailand for my week vacation. I'm spending the $600. So what I would do is buy the ticket. Once you buy that ticket, you're going to Thailand. So I ended up hovering my mouse over the purchase of this ticket to Thailand, which from Korea is $600. From America, it's like $1,200. And I closed my eyes and I clicked the mouse button, and just like that ticket was purchased. I was going to Thailand. So the whole mentality was, once you buy that ticket, you lock in, and they strap you in, and there's nowhere to go but on that path. And so Hunter S. Thompson was the curator of that mentality, and I morphed it to me and how it worked for me. So he's a huge influencer in my life. I do also really enjoy somebody who is not afraid to take things to the limit, because I mean, it's a scary thing to take something to the limit because you don't know where the edge is and you don't want to fall over, because that's not the goal. The goal is to find the edge, not go over it. And so a lot of people can get hurt if they have a too loose of a plan for going forward, too lenient, there's no structure, we're just gonna wing it. There's something about winging it that I love, but there just that little bit of structure that holds you back from going over the edge is where I want to be. And so I saw, Hunter S. Thompson with his Fear and Loathing movie is with a lot of drug use going to the edge, and he wrote about it. Right? His experiments is on these edge, on the edge of this mind warp that he put himself through. And when I was at Burning Man and I had the opportunity to go to the edge, um, my intuition was so loud. I would say no. I desperately wanted to know what it was like to go to the edge, and I grew up in a family. Drugs were not very prevalent or at all. Like, I'd never seen any drugs until I went to college, and that's when I did see the marijuana. And Burning Man was definitely a little bit more exposure to other sorts of drugs, but I knew that I wanted to go the edge, but I am not too far. I didn't want to go too far, and so there were a few times where I had experimented with things that took me, and to my perspective, too far. And so, because I tried that, and because my intuition the whole time was saying, "Don't do it, don't do it, don't do it," but my regrets, it was like, I don't want to have FOMO. I don't want to regret. I don't want to regret. So I did it like an idiot. But I'm so happy because now I know, hey man, that stuff's not for me. Y'all, I see some of y'all going to the edge and having a great time and making great stuff when you come back, and leaps and bounds, and no judgment here. I'm not gonna do it. It's not built for me. Um, and man, having the balls to take that risk and take that ride mentally into this whole new world inside of your own brain that you have never experienced, because there's no way to experience it except through chemicals. Insanity in a way, because you are seeing things from within you in a way that you can never, no one can tell you. No one can tell you what it's like to be high, to be rolling, to be tripping. Whatever it is you're doing, nobody can tell you and you fully understand. The only way is for you to put your hand in the fire, man. Feel how hot that is. How do you like it? Do you want to do it again? Do you not want to do it again? And these are all things that having the balls to kind of buy the ticket to take that ride pushes, shows you where the edge is. And having that kind of awareness, I think it can be training wheels for people to take that risk. I think if you don't have the respect for your mind and drugs and chemicals and your intuition, if you don't have the respect for any of those things, I think you can go too far. But I have never personally gone to like the too far where it was unhealthy. It was just too far where mentally, where I wasn't able to handle the feelings I was feeling. It was just because it was new, and probably because I was not surrounded by trustworthy people. That was another lesson I learned through taking these risks. But these people, helped me be curious about others, be curious about, not be afraid of people. When I graduated from college, and my first job in Washington, D.C. as a video editor, I made political ads. Don't hate me. I joined this organization called Couchsurfing, where you offer your couch, a place to stay for travelers. So it's a online platform just like Facebook, where you have a profile and you talk about your couch in your house and your rules as a homeowner. And people who are travelers have a profile about why they're traveling, who they are, what their specs are, you meet in the middle and you talk to each other via the internet, um, and then you say yay or nay whether or not you want them to stay with you. And man, I being in DC, I had I think over 200 people stay at my house for the year and a half that I opened my couch, and so many travelers from all over the world. You know how many people hurt me, stole from me, did anything of discomfort to me? Not one person. Not one person. And so the reason I bring that up is because I took this risk to trust people, and as a reward, I got this amazing experience of international cultures and ways of seeing things. The perspectives were not within my bubble whatsoever. And man, it made me curious more and more. I want more. I want, what is it like out there? What is it like out there? And how do I get there? And so I started talking to people, and how'd you do it? How did you get there? And reading books about how other people got there. And one thing led to another. I had a job over in South Korea and taught there for 2 years, and then spent a year traveling around Asia. I mean, I slept in under mosquito nets in the middle of the jungle that I had to hike hours to get to this spot where, and they were gonna, I got to pick the live chicken that they killed and served to us. I mean, that is how rural I got. And it's all from exposure to these people who inspired me in my developing years. This comedy, HBO with their comedy, and so who knows, let me back up. So I was influenced through communication platforms of television, CDs, and then eventually the internet and all that the internet is today. But growing up pre-internet, and then in the boom of the internet, 95, these exposures to these type of people were so detrimental to the development of my life, to the person I am today, the decisions I made in growing up, was because I had people who influenced me that, I mean, I chose them, but I saw them in passing. And then my mind said, I kind of like your gig there, buddy. I'm gonna sit down and watch. And from watching many people, I mean a handful of people very religiously throughout my life, it has really, I mean, you can follow what influences me in my work today. I'm so avant-garde. I want to be different in every way. I want to challenge everybody in a good way, and obviously there's some skill to that I'm learning. I'm not the best at it yet, but I want to be the raw George Carlin, saying how I feel in such an eloquent way. And I want to be the Hunter S. Thompson who's not giving a shit and going and being curious and asking questions and then figuring it out on his own. And I want to be the drag queen with a ridiculous amount of confidence to walk into a room and not give a care about anyone else. And I have those experiences and those inspirations within me now. And so now, as a 34-year-old, I sit down and I ask myself, well, can I be somebody's George Carlin? Can I be somebody's Jerry Seinfeld? Can I be somebody's Hunter S. Thompson? And the truth is, I want to be, and man, I have no idea if I'm doing it because no one's given me any feedback, but my intuition is telling me that if no one may be listening now, no one may be listening a year from now, or maybe even 10 years from now, but my intuition is telling me that if this is how I need to express myself through communication, because I want to inspire others like I was inspired, someday someone, at least one person, is going to be affected. And the hard part is accepting that I may not know the reach that I have, and and that's okay, because I feel good right now in this moment as I share and as I open up myself to this microphone, not knowing who will be on the other end ever. This is recorded in history. I'll never know whoever is on the other side, but let me tell you that the more that you are, the more that you seek, and the more that you see, the more that you are, the more activities and thoughts that you are around, the more people you meet, the more cultures you meet, the more different foods you eat, the things that you do that are different, the more of it that you do accumulates. You may not be, you know, you may not have the answer now, and it may not all come together when you want it to, but if you plant little seeds here and there, you can pull from your memory, and you can be influenced all over again by something that at the time you may not have paid attention to, but it's there. And the only thing is you just have to be exposed. You have to go out, and you can't be afraid to have conversations with strangers. You can't be afraid to travel to other countries. You can't be afraid to take a risk and go swimming in the creek because you're afraid you're going to get sick. You know what? You know, if you get sick, that makes your body stronger. I thoroughly believe in that. Obviously, don't go swimming in sewage, but you got to challenge your body every now and then so it stays top notch. I think that's the same for taking risks. You got to take risks to fill your influence bank and your memories of all these different things for when you are ready to pull that tool out of the shed and use it. I guess another analogy is the more you're exposed to, the more tools that you have in your shed that when you are ready, you can pull out and start sharpening. And I know it's, hindsight's 2020, and people are going to do what they want to do, and that's the way it is. People do what they need to do until they're ready for what's next. People are going to not know until the moment they know. And I mean, I find that if I can just accept that I can freely move forward in this fluid sort of now adventure. It's always right now. And I can pull from those these people in my past, these people from the communication realm that made it to my ears and eyes and consciousness and motivated me to be a certain way and to do a certain thing. It's just fantastic, and I want to be that. I want to be that for someone, whether I know it or not. And let's see how long we've been going. Man, it's about an hour, so I'm going to go ahead and leave it at that. Today's stream of consciousness was talking about childhood influences. Being aware of the things that influenced you and comparing it to who you are today could help you unpack something you needed to unpack, or help you realize something you didn't realize. Everyone's different. The only thing you got to do, man, you got to buy that ticket. And the act of buying the ticket is putting yourself in a situation where you have got to take that ride. I'll give you one example. I like to, in August, I'm going to put a fire show out there. And currently in February, I have nothing other than the date set. That is my ticket. I am locked in. I am throwing a fire show in August. But hey, thanks for listening. I wish you the best of luck, and if you're going to try these exercises with yourself, please just start with any old childhood memory and work think about it until another thought comes in your head, and then go with it, and then think about it until and go with it. You may go through 10 different thoughts in a minute. There's no right or wrong number, but the stream of consciousness, starting with childhood influences, how can you connect it with your today's life? But again, thank you everybody. Tuxedo Cat Productions here in Concord, North Carolina, signing off for episode 4.